Hello everyone, my name is Shamika Day and I'm the group leader. In this video, I will briefly be discussing the overview of the case. In the case, Ava and James are teen parents who have not grown into young adults. They have no experience whatsoever with raising and caring for children. And teenage births are associated with lower annual income for the mothers, and 80% of teen mothers must rely on welfare at some point. Teenage mothers are more likely to drop out of school, and only about one third of teen mothers attain a high school diploma. With all with all the statistics against against them, how could they possibly raise children who while using drugs? I mean, it's a devastating time for both the parents and the children, being that the children are disabled. Um, Teenage pregnancies are associated with increased rates of alcohol abuse and substance abuse, lower educational levels, and reduced earning potentials in teen fathers. The grandparents referred them to social service because they were worried. The grandparent knew that the obstacles that they had to face, they knew that these kids were young and inexperienced and had no prior history to caring for children. They were fresh. They were teenagers. They're still in grade school. They had these children who are disabled, and they need special attention. They need special education, and these children are unable to give them that. They may love them and they may care for their children, but they're not able to give these children, what the basic needs to survive, being that they have this disability. And the grandparents were aware of that, and so they seek help for the children. They have these children, and they're doing what's best for the children. The grandparents are. The children are disabled and need quality support and assistance. The parents are not able to give the children what they need. Um, they are addicts, and because of this, their children vital needs will always be put second to their drug addiction. They don't have the basic necessities in their home for children, such as furniture. The grandparents want to take the children, and but with their circumstances, they're not able to. The grandparents want to take the children, and they should. And although they are older, they can provide a better living, environment for the children. And I think that's the best options for the children in this case. If Ava and James are children, themselves, and they put themselves in this situation, and sadly, these children, these young and innocent children, are in this situation, and there's really nothing they can do about it. And so the grandmothers, she went out and the grandparents went out and seek help, and they're doing the right thing, because the children deserve it. They don't deserve to have to live in a bad environment, and an environment that does not how can I say this? They don't deserve to live in an environment where their basic needs are not being met. All right.
Define the ethical problems. Identify the ethical issues, ethical tensions involved. Clearly identify the ethical issues in terms of conflicting duties, values, or obligations. Eva and James are determined to take care of their children without assistance from others. Though the parents want to fulfill their parenting duties, they cannot perform them adequately at this time. Even and James verbally say they want to care for Angela and Connie, but how could they be true when they sold all the furniture in the home except for the baby's cot, which is probably too small for her because Angela is now 2 years old and needs a bigger bed. So aside from the family sleeping, sitting, and eating on the floor, the children have disabilities that needs constant attention. Angela and Connie require regular tube feedings, which will require that a parent be present in the house at all times to provide them their feedings. Without any appliances, any unused supplements from previous feedings are being left out on the counter. These supplements are being left in a temperature danger zone, which could cause further complications with the girl's medical conditions. Eva and James also have a drug addiction to the substance of crack cocaine. This addiction causes the parents to be mentally and emotionally present, not to be mentally and emotionally present in their children's lives. The grandparents are willing to assist the parents and live nearby. As parents, they should let the grandparents get the girls until they have went through rehab and can show means of taking care of the girls without assistance. Ethically, the grandparents had to report the abuse they have witnessed because they are required to do so by law. This had to be really tough for them to watch their grandchildren go through this type of abuse, but even harder to have to report their own child to Child Protective Services. Morally, the parents should cooperate with CPS and release the children to a stable home until they can show that they are responsible and drug-free and able to care for the children themselves.
What ethical theory and ethical principles apply to this case? The ethical theory I chose for this case is deontology. The deontological class of ethical theory states that people should adhere to their obligations and duties when engaged in decision making when ethics are in play. Because the parents cannot take care of their children, the grandparents are willing to look after the children. The ethical principles that apply to this case are justice, truthfulness, and confidentiality. The reason why I chose those is because non-malicious tells you to do no harm by not abandoning a client who is in need of your services. Justice is the obligation to be fair to all people, regardless of the individual characteristics, and truthfulness, confidentiality, like being honest with your client but keeping their personal business confidential. What legal standards are relevant in this case? REMA standards explicitly highlight social workers' obligation to engage in activities that promote social justice and general welfare of society from local to global standards. Standard 6.01. These activities may include facilitating public discussion of social policy issues, providing professional services in public emergencies, and addressing basic human needs. Eva and James have been using crack cocaine for some time, and their kids Angela, age 2, and Connie, age 9, have disabilities to where they require regular feeding and attentive care. Because their parents are using drugs, statutes governing social workers' obligation to report suspected abuse and neglect of children.
Whoopsies. Okay, my name is Michaela Cameron. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. I wanted to first speak about the case that we had. So we had the case with Eva and James, the two young parents, both addicted to crack cocaine. The husband parents referred, the parents. They had two little girls. The names were Angela and Connie. One was 9, one was 2. Both were disabled, so both required a lot of attention and regular feeding. They mentioned in the case that they had sold all the furniture, but felt like they were devoted to their children. The grandparents also expressed interest in the children if they were taken from the parents. So outside of that, I wanted to discuss the standards. So I had 3 standards. My first standard was standard 1.04. It just pretty much sums up the client's trust. It just comes with a lot of techniques to just help win over a client, and that's really important to gain the trust of a client so that you'll be able to get somewhere with them. Because if they don't trust you, you can't really get, it's hard to get their description on their personal experience if they don't trust you. I also have standard 1.01. It discusses the commitment to the client and how important it is as a social worker. And then 1.07, this discusses the privacy of the client. It also talked about something that I didn't think of, and it's also that some clients may decline services, may not want services from the social worker. And that's just not necessarily in this situation, but in any other kind of situation. So those are the standards I had. So I'll just jump right into what I would do in this situation if I were the social worker dispatched to this case. So firstly, I would try to do a verbal investigation. With this investigation, I would just try to understand why I was called to this case, try to understand the situation. I'll ask questions to kind of indicate mental illness, ask questions about their daily routine, about their eating schedule, about school, stuff like that. And this is about how they feel. And not only will I ask the questions to the children, I will also talk to the parents as well, just to get, like I said, mental illness is a big thing to look for, but also just incompetencies in the stories. Identify incompetence. Yeah, I just kind of touched on that a little bit because it's important to, if the stories don't line up, that's an obvious indicator that something isn't right. So it's a big deal to kind of try to separate the parents and the children and discuss, the situation like that. Okay, and also I would try to understand the reality of the complaint and try to help them understand the reality of the complaint and the seriousness. So then I would go into the home visits if necessary. In this case, it would be necessary. I'm not sure how it works. I tried to do a little investigation on this, but I guess in some cases law enforcement aren't required, but I would always try to push for law enforcement, especially in this kind of situation. But with my home visit, I would probably try to search for signs of physical negligence, potentially dangerous situations, and lack of physical things to support the child's well-being, like toys and, things that children need, as far as food, stuff like that. Also, I kind of want to touch back on potentially dangerous situations because they did mention that they were drug users. They might, the children's well-being may be, it could very well be a priority to the parent. But as far as drugs is concerned, there's, no telling, what's going on when they're inebriated or whatever. So, yeah, those are the things that I would do this case. So, firstly, I would try to do a verbal investigation. With this investigation, I would just try to understand why I was called to this case, try to understand the situation. I'll ask questions to kind of indicate mental illness, ask questions about their daily routine, about their eating schedule, about school, stuff like that. And this is about how they feel. And not only will I ask the questions to the children, I will also talk to the parents as well, just to get, like I said, mental illness is a big thing to look for, but also just incompetencies in the stories. Identify incompetence. Yeah, I just kind of touched on that a little bit because it's important to, if the stories don't line up, that's an obvious indicator that something isn't right. So it's a big deal to kind of try to separate the parents and the children and discuss, the situation like that. Okay, and also I would try to understand the reality of the complaint and try to help them understand the reality of the complaint and the seriousness. So then I would go into the home visits if necessary. In this case, it would be necessary. I'm not sure how it works. I tried to do a little investigation on this, but I guess in some cases law enforcement aren't required, but I would always try to push for law enforcement, especially in this kind of situation. But with my home visit, I would probably try to search for signs of physical negligence, potentially dangerous situations, and lack of physical things to support the child's well-being, like toys and, things that children need, as far as food, stuff like that. Also, I kind of want to touch back on potentially dangerous situations because they did mention that they were drug users. They might, the children's well-being may be, it could very well be a priority to the parent. But as far as drugs is concerned, there's, no telling, what's going on when they're inebriated or whatever. So, yeah, those are the things that I would look for as a social worker. Also, I want to touch on who's affected by this kind of situation. So, of course, the child is affected. Being taken out of a home is a big thing, even if they're not. Social services, it's kind of scary for a child. So, social service, the child is definitely affected. Also, the parents, because it's almost always it's guaranteed that the household will change positively or negatively after the social worker leaves. So, and that is almost 100% has to do with the parents and how the parents change their behavior. So, the parents are definitely affected, as is the social worker, because as social workers, like, it goes back to the standards. It's our job to make sure that we ensure trust and make sure that we do the best that we can for our clients. So, to put our clients in a bad situation, it's kind of bad on us. So, it boosts our self-esteem and our confidence to be able to help a client. I kind of wanted to touch on ethical violations as well. Ethical issues. So, to me, the ethical violation would be the drug use, also the furniture situation, because to me, you can't effectively, raise children in an unsafe environment. And if there's a house with no furniture, that kind of it doesn't sound safe to me. Open sockets and stuff like that just sounds, they didn't mention that, but it just sounds like that would kind of be a situation that they would have with no furniture, because that kind of thing wouldn't be covered up if they don't have a couch or a TV. So that stuff is just open and susceptible for the children to access. Not sure about the toys. Like I said, they didn't mention that, but yeah. So those would be my ethical violations. It's definitely a dilemma. I don't think I have anything else. So, like I mentioned, my name is Michaela Cameron. Thank you.
In concluding, in this case, I think the best resolution for the children would be for them to be placed in a better living environment, which would be with their grandparents. Because the children depend on many adults as they grow up. Parents, relatives, teachers, and child care workers. They all provide, children with love, support, and guidance. No one wants to see children grow up in fear, anger, or neglect. But no one is born knowing how to care for children. Sometimes we make mistakes that hurt them. Whether you are a parent, a teacher, a relative, or a caregiver, you can make a difference and help the children you love grow up in a caring and loving environment. Adults don't have to be perfect, just willing to listen, learn, grow, and change. Sometimes people are afraid to get involved in someone else's problem. Sometimes people be afraid to break up, homes or break up families. But the goal of stopping abuse and neglect is to keep children safe. Part of keeping children safe is finding them help. Finding not only them help, but finding help for the adult. Adults who have been abused or neglected, adults who have abused or neglected a child, in many cases have been abused and hurt themselves. So it's very good that it's very vital that we find help for the adults as well. I suggest by resolving the problem. I suggest having the kids removed from the home and placing them in a safer and quality care environment. I believe the best place for them to get the care is from their grandparents. The grandparents is wiser, more mature. They've lived a long life. They have the experience. They can provide us, a safer place for the children. And I think that's by resolving this problem, the children should be placed in their grandparents' care. All right.